Well, joining us now on our Newsmaker line is former U.S. Congressman Rob Bishop, one-time Speaker of the House as well. Rob, how are you? Welcome to the Rod and Greg Show. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
I'm doing fine, and it's good to be with you guys again.
Rob, Greg and I, first of all, want to know if you have found a pair of socks yet.
I have. I just haven't used them for the past 4 years.
Good man. Good man.
Why did you write this op-ed piece, Rob?
Well, this is one of those issues that is terribly bothering to me because it goes against the very fundamental foundation of law, that there needs to be checks and balances, and the legislative body should have according to the Constitution, should be endowed with legislative policy. And initiatives by their very nature are up or down, all or nothing, yes, no ability to compromise. There needs to be a way of trying to balance it out so that not one group or one person or even a vote of one people can destroy somebody's individual liberties without having some kind of balance to it. We've seen what's happened in California with initiatives that have changed drastically the law in California and have had devastating impacts, especially on the business community. I don't want to see that happening in Utah.
So one of the arguments that people say is, well, this has been very narrowly crafted. My answer back to that, Congressman, has been, so you say it's narrowly crafted, but at the end of the day, the judiciary, that branch of government, gets to decide what's deemed government reform or not. Are you worried about the judicial activism and the reverse engineering of what that would actually mean? You can't put the definitions of what government reform is in statute based on this decision by the state Supreme Court, this newfound power of initiatives. How do you view this? Is this narrowly crafted, or is this a Pandora's box?
What the state Supreme Court did, in my opinion, is not narrow, but actually creates a new superclass of law that no one knows what it will or will not maintain or what will happen to it in the future. The founding fathers believed in Newton's idea of checks and balances. Opposite attracts opposite. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There needs to be some kind of way that any action that takes place in government can have a balancing impact. The legislature needs to be a balance of any initiative to make sure that initiatives are written properly, that initiatives don't have hidden insight, and that initiatives can be changed. And to limit that is going against the very philosophy of why we have legislatures in the first place and why people elect their representatives to the legislature and what purpose they do have.
Congressman, I mentioned this on the show, and Greg and I have gone back and forth on this. I honestly believe, I understand what's taking place here, but this is going to be a tough sell to voters to convince them to go along with this because they feel, hey, I voted this way, now you're taking my vote away from me. How do you convince people that that is simply not the case?
Well, you need to look at some of the things that have been done, especially to the business community in years past. My first reelect as congressman, there was an initiative that was drawn out in another state to try and attack a Utah state company under the guise of getting more money for education. But what it was really about was trying to take the business share away from a Utah company and send it to an out-of-state company. In California, when they did Prop 47 as a way of trying to get fewer criminals to put in jail, and they made shoplifting up to $900 a misdemeanor, what that has done is increase the amount of petty theft and the amount of shoplifting to the point that businesses are closing in California. It has unintended consequences. You need to have some group out there whose responsibility it is to look after the details of these and make sure that there is no unintended consequences that comes from an initiative that is an up or down vote with no chance of actually having a compromise or saying, I like this part, I don't like that part. That's taken away from the voter. And that's why you need to have a legislative body that has that function of doing legislative work to be there to try and make sure that there are no unintended consequences as there are in initiative after initiative in California.
My final question is, to your exact point about there's a balance, a counterbalance, there always has to be a pro and a con. There's two sides of the coin. You get that through a legislative branch, its processes. And if you have initiative law, you ought to have a counterbalance there. Absent a legislative body, are you aware of any state where there is an inherent and built-in equally funded counter story or counter or retort to whatever initiative is being presented to the voters? Or is it truly just a one-way street for those that are well-heeled and can, pay for the campaign statewide? Has any state been able to find a counter initiative process to campaign the other side of the story?
No, if it's an initiative, if you have the money to do it, you can try and push through things that may have negative influences on the rights of individuals, and there is not a counterbalance to it, unless they wanted to concentrate on the idea of a referendum, in which case the voters could take a law that was actually passed in the legislative body legitimately and have a say on whether that should be implemented or not. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is not referendum. This is an initiative where somebody with enough money to have a whole bunch of really cool, slick PR campaigns can push through any idea and not necessarily have anyone realizing the implications and the details of that. And once again, in California, you have seen initiative after initiative that has really cost California money and jobs and businesses. Businesses have been hurt by it. We've seen that in the past in Utah, and there are people who are threatening to use the initiative process today to try and get their ideas through when they don't think it can actually be done legitimately through a legislative process.
Congressman, always great chatting with you. Hope to have you back on down the road. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
It's always good to talk to you again, and I think this is a significant issue that has repercussions beyond what people just think about. It's not simply do you have the right to vote. It's do you have the right to change everything without any kind of checks and balances.
Yeah, very important note.
Well
Thank
said.
you. That's former Utah Congressman Rob Bishop, Speaker of the House, one time talking about this initiative.